Let's go ahead and get started. So I want to officially welcome you again. My name is Chris Inks, Marketing Director at Compliance Group. Want to welcome you to episode number 5, can't believe it, of the CSA Revolution series with our friends at Boston Scientific, who happen to reside in Ireland today. So good evening to both of you gentlemen. So let's go ahead, Callan, and get started. A couple housekeeping items. As always, if you haven't attended this series in the last couple of weeks, we do record it. We will send the link to you after the fact. We will also send you the link to the presentation that we're going to show you today as well. We will have time for questions at the end. We typically like to leave about 10 or 15 minutes at the end to go ahead and answer questions that you have. In the past, we've had quite a few questions that have come in. So again, if we can't get to your question, be rest assured that we will get to you offline after the fact if we don't get to your question today. All right, so just real quick before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's session, I just want to go over each bio of our friends at Boston Scientific. In the upper left-hand corner is Mr. Damian McPhillips. He's the Senior Quality Manager leading the global software and digital health teams across Boston Scientific with responsibility for quality and compliance. Damian, 20 years of experience, which would make you 29, delivering software validation optimization across large-scale enterprise-wide projects. To the right of that is Mr. Ray Murphy. Ray, good evening, sir. You are a computer system validation subject matter expert with 30 years of experience in quality engineering, quality auditing, quality management, regulatory compliance, and software validation. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Khaled Musali, Executive Vice President of Clients and Regulatory Relations at Compliance Group. You are focused on quality and compliance executive, a thought leader in this cutting edge technology, specifically around the life sciences industry, 25 years of experience in corporate IT, manufacturing, and quality. And you are part of the Fix-It team that is leading this revolution down the path of CSA. Khaled, welcome. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, sir. And I'm the youngest here.
Excellent. We wanted to give everyone just kind of a think of it as a Netflix rerun episodes of where we were and where we are. So we start off with episode 1 with our friends at Gilead Sciences way back on July the 9th. And they actually started their CSA journey back in '97. The series after that, we had our friends at Johnson & Johnson. They really talked about their CSA journey and how they created a pilot to create an effective MES, which is also known as Manufacturing Execution System. On August the 6th, we had a CSA panel discussion, which included Mr. Cisco Vicenti from the FDA, along with Fresenius Medical Care. Fresenius at that during that webinar talked about the transformation they had from CSV to CSA and their internal cultural barriers that they had to overcome to get there. And then the last episode that we hosted a couple of weeks ago with Medtronic, April talked about their CSA journey with automation by incorporating an effective validation electronic signature tool, ALM tool, called Polarian, and how they've been able to efficiently adopt that application. So that's where we were. This is where we are. I will now pass it to Mr. Khaled Musali with our friends at Boston Scientific.
Thank you, Chris. Much appreciated. And thanks to everyone for keeping up with us and attending this series. We know how much you're passionate about it because we're very passionate, specifically Damian and Ray. I know for a fact these two gentlemen worked really hard on putting a lot of recommendations together, which really resulted in the FDA draft, in the upcoming FDA Draft Guidance, which the ones that I don't want you to wait for, just go ahead and do what Damian and Ray have done already, and other folks within the Fix-It team, and also within, so far, about 15 of our clients have implemented CSA. I also wanted to mention when we kicked it off back in April 23rd with Cisco Vicente and Stephen Cook. At the time, we talked about the journey, and Cisco is a very passionate guy about this topic too when it comes to CSA. It just makes sense, and really the idea is we want to open your appetite to CSA, start thinking about it, and that's why we decided to bring along the Fix-It team to speak about their experiences, their challenges, and now the success stories. With that said, I'm just going to move on to our agenda today. So you definitely have met already Damian and Ray. We're going to talk a little bit about the cultural barriers, and the reason why I like to bring this slide up, because we are dealing with it day in, day out. every single call with a client, every single day is the same issues, right? And then, sorry, we're not going to talk about risk assessment and paper process. We're going to jump in right away with Boston Scientific and their case study, preventive maintenance and calibration systems. We'll also talk about the next steps, and we'll open it up for questions. Again, your objective, or our objective out of all these series is please start thinking how you want to implement CSA, how you want to digitize your current paper process, and create awareness to accelerate innovation and realize value. No need, main objective, no need to wait for the FDA Draft Guidance because we're all implementing it. The entire industry is very passionate about it. This is the industry team. Again, Damien and Ray, my colleague within the FIXA team. We've worked really hard for the past 4.5 years, and I'm sure Damien and Ray will mention a little bit. Both from Ireland, they used to travel to come to the FDA and give their feedback. So again, if any of you on the call have questions about, so what are the international regulatory agency or the notified body doing, or are they accepting CSA? Because we know those questions are going to come up. So hopefully Damien and Ray can speak to that as well. Okay. Again, reminder for those of you who hasn't seen the slide yet, it is prioritized, the guidance for fiscal year of 2020. Fiscal year for the FDA ends really the end of this month. Now, are we going to have the guidance end of the month? We don't know, and we can't promise anything. Although we're part of that FIXA team, but we are at no liberty to discuss any dates or anything beside what's on the website for the FDA. So please follow that link, and it will be updated on regular basis. All right, some of the cultural barriers paralyzing the industry. Obviously, for many years, since 1997, or probably earlier, we started validating software just like we're validating product, right? We were very limited at it, and we stuck to it. So over 25 plus years now, we're still doing the same thing we've done ever since. And honestly, it's painful, it's costly, non-value added, absolutely. So what are those cultural barriers? You know, we are risk-based, everything is high. Why? Because it's easy to identify everything is high, so that way I test the entire thing, right? And we're not really focusing just on intended use. We validate, again, all software like product software. Is that fair? I don't believe so. Most deviation and are documentation errors, and I believe that, and I've seen that in the past 25 years of my life. Most the typographical errors, you know, in most of the defects that we used to write is just coming out from, you know, bad writing of test cases. Again, it took 4 times longer for CSV than the actual analysis. I'm sure many of you are shaking their head. Data mining. We looked at purchasing an inexpensive BI tool, but CSV cost was too high. And I've heard that before many times in my life. It costs about 40% of the project to validate a system. Is that really fair? You know, I can go on and on and on, but I really want to give the time to Damien and Ray to share their own experience, their journey, and also the case study that they prepared for us today. So really the summary impact here is manufacturers are reluctant to invest. When they invest, the documentation burden is excessive, and cybersecurity enterprise risk increase, and we're all slow to upgrade. Many of our clients, when we're on a call with them, so how do you manage your you know, your paper validation, or how do you manage your validation documentation? Oh, we're electronic. Electronic meaning you sign a paper, you do a Word document, you sign it, you scan, and then you put it in a document management system. Well, I'm sorry, that's not really automated, right? That is really hybrid. So there's a lot of opportunity for you to upgrade and automate and not fear the validation burden, okay? So I'm really gonna take a break here and pass it on to my friends from Boston Scientific, Damien and Ray.
Thanks, Khaled. I'll kick it off here. And folks, Damien McPhillips here. I lead the global software quality and digital health team within Boston Scientific. I'm absolutely delighted to come along today and speak to you all in relation to computer system assurance and how we're adopting these principles within Boston Scientific. BSC has been involved in the CSA paradigm shift from the beginning. I suppose joining, as Khaled said, we joined, the industry and FDA team back in 2016. As a company, we absolutely embrace the principles defined in the CSA approach, and we believe that it provides a higher level of quality and also a lot of efficiencies, as Khaled just mentioned, around execution. Today, we'll take you through an overview of, we'll provide you a quick overview of Boston Scientific as a company. We'll walk through how we've been involved with CSA up to this point. And then Ray, my colleague, Ray Murphy, will walk you through how we've applied CSA in an enterprise-wide preventive maintenance and calibration system. So quickly overview on Boston Scientific. We're headquartered in Marlborough, Massachusetts. We're a global medical device provider with 35,000 employees worldwide. In order to best serve our patients in a rapidly changing environment, BSC concentrate on we have a core mission and values. And I suppose really our mission is to transform patient lives by providing innovative medical solutions and provide these solutions around the world. We have offices in more than 120 countries worldwide, and we share a common set of values that act as our guiding principles. The values are on the bottom of the screen there. Really, the main value we're going to talk about today is meaningful innovation. And really, as Khaled mentioned there earlier, it's something we've been striving to do for a long time as a company, is invest in innovation in technology, innovate through technology in the manufacturing space. As Khaled mentioned, for Boston Scientific and for other companies, computer system validation has been a deterrent up to this point, and we're really going to walk you through that here today. This is a list of really the areas and the range of products we actually provide. We have products in our neuro space where we have pain management implants, where we treat tremors and Parkinson's disease. In our respiratory space, we have asthma and lung products. In a uro and pelvic health, we have various products around stones and men's and women's health. In our cardio space, we have implantable defibrillators, pacemakers, stents, lots of different valves to treat diseases. And then in the digestive system, we have many products to treat cancers and digestive bleeding. So jump on, Khaled, please. It's the final slide on the company here. So we are a global company, like most folks probably listening in today on the call. We have, we have 35,000 employees. We've offices in more than 120 countries worldwide. We have 16 principal manufacturing facilities, and on top of that, we've an additional 20 manufacturing facilities, which is important for later on whenever we think about rolling out enterprise software across our manufacturing sites. So here we're talking about 36 manufacturing sites where we'd roll out the system Ray's talking about today. As a company, we're a global company. We've more than 45% of our sales outside US in 2020. So obviously, with a company this size, right, a big, large global company, we're always looking to invest in, and we have heavily invested in software systems. If you think about our enterprise-wide software, we have enterprise-wide ERP systems, we've manufacturing execution systems, we have doc control systems, we have complaints, training, everything. We've about 200 plus systems that fall into the non-device software space and in scope for traditional computer system validation that we know today. Also, if you think about our manufacturing space, right, where we just mentioned we've 36 manufacturing sites. We have over the years added a lot of automation to our production lines, and again, with this automation comes computer system validation. So we're looking to streamline and drive more quality by automating into our production lines. But on the flip side of that, there's the cost of computer system validation that actually has to be factored in to every piece of investment in technology and manufacturing side, and also factored into investment in enterprise-wide software. So as a company, we spend a huge amount of time and effort annually on non-device software validation. Okay, so we'll basically step you through a little bit here, a high-level overview of our involvement in, and the the CSA journey. So, as has been mentioned on previous calls, Fresenius, along with Siemens and the compliance group and the FDA and industry representatives here, had a great meeting back in 2015, right, where they had executive leadership involved. Boston Scientific were there as well, and we're basically the whole discussion that day was around, what's prohibiting investment in the non-device software space, and why is the medical device industry not moving forward more quickly here? And the outcome you've heard before, right, is the cost of computer system validation is prohibitive, and that absolutely resonated with Boston Scientific leadership team. And once the industry team were formed in 2016, I've been lucky enough to be part of that team, for the last 4.5 years, and it's been a great journey. And like I said in the beginning, as a company, we absolutely embrace the principles in the CSA, and we're moving towards them, and Ray will walk you through that today. So really, what have we done? What are we doing in this space as a company, or what benefits do Boston Scientific see here? So we're talking a good bit so far about efficiency, but we see a lot of improvements from a quality system perspective as well. By removing the documentation burden and decreasing the documentation burden, we're allowing our test teams and our product development teams, we're giving them more time to actually challenge the system. We all want a working system. The product owners want a working system. Our businesses, our customers all want a working system. They don't want a stack of documentation to say it's working and then errors there. We want to have our limited resources spending time challenging the system and less time creating documentation. As a company, we see significant annual cost savings here, right? So about 30% validation effort reduction is what we see here from a BSC perspective. We see opportunity in enterprise-wide software. I mentioned the 200 plus systems we have there, our CAPAs, our complaints, our MES, our training. Within the manufacturing space, we have a lot of automation there, and we'll continue to automate there. And I suppose a good nugget for you is if we were thinking as a company for investing, $1 million, let's say, in some capital or some software system investment, we'd be adding 50% on top of that for the validation cost. And then every time you actually go and update the system, as Khaled said, there's a validation cost burden there as well. So it really is a deterrent to investing in automating in the manufacturing space and in enterprise-wide software. Khaled mentioned earlier around what the team here and with the new guidance document, the guidance around data mining. It's absolutely an area we're embracing as a company. We see a lot of opportunity there for to leverage the guidance. And then spreadsheet validation. We have thousands of spreadsheets across the company, and some of what we do to validate them is illogical. and people actually, it's a huge amount of work to validate a spreadsheet. So again, in the guidance document, there's some great direction there around, absolutely spend your time validating whenever it's a complex spreadsheet. Do validate it and make sure it works and document it. Whenever it's a simple application spreadsheet, there should be a very simple validation, and that's where the guidance is driving you. Within Boston Scientific, what have we done so far? We've taken the principles from the CSA, the risk-based principles, and we've trialed it on a preventive maintenance and calibration system. So if you think about a preventive maintenance and calibration system, you're thinking about manufacturing sites. So if you go back to what I said, we have 36 manufacturing sites across the globe, worldwide. So the current rollout strategy is you validate the core system, and then as you implement it in every site, you have a validation at every site. We've been holding off, for a number of years in upgrading this package because our sites did not want to invest the time and effort in the validation here. So CSA has been a key enabler for us to actually drive forward with this investment in a enterprise-wide manufacturing site preventive maintenance calibration system. We've seen huge benefits from the CSA approach there. Also, we've developed and rolled out a smart procedure per the guidance on data mining, and also we're going updating our enterprise-wide processes and our spreadsheet processes, and also our equipment processes to embrace the CSA and the risk-based validation. That's it for me for now, folks. I'm going to hand you over to Ray Murphy, who will walk you into through in some detail around what the team have done on calibration and preventive maintenance. Then I'll come back at the end to sort of to summarize and wrap it up from a BSc perspective. Thank you.
Thanks a million. So I think you're all pretty familiar with some or all of the CSV pain points I'm going to mention below. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here in the first place. So we all know it takes an age to complete. I mean, whoever heard of a quick enterprise software validation system, right? It just doesn't happen. A mountain of documentation needs to be completed. I mean, how often have we seen a trolley load of documentation being wheeled into the audit because that's what we think the auditor wants? A multitude of detailed test scripts must be generated, and these will include test objectives and detailed step-by-step instructions that must be followed by the tester. And if we're honest, these tests will probably dry run a number of times ever before there's an official run, because God forbid we find out we've a typo during an execution, because the management of a test script error is extremely burdensome. It's fair to say that we spend almost as much time challenging the protocol than what we do challenging the system under test, and that's just like a nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. And as Damien mentioned, these are just some of the pain points holding companies back from investing in new technologies. And at Boston Scientific, we were no different. We wanted to implement a new calibration and global maintenance solution to be used across all our manufacturing sites. And while the quality and efficiency benefits from introducing such a system were obvious, the burden of CSV was making the implementation less appealing, if not impossible. And even looking at our existing calibration system that was validated a number of years ago, it was validated using traditional methods, and you could see documentation rather than critical thinking played a central role in its validation. We applied the same rigor to each feature being tested, regardless of the risk associated with it. And like what many of you would have done, I'm sure, we sent our brightest and best engineer off to complete a vendor audit, only for the results of that audit to sit in the drawer, just to say that we ticked the box and we've completed an audit. And shame on us, we hardly used any of the information we leveraged on that audit. So it's hardly a good use of time or money. As a result, we ended up with a typical blizzard of documentation, including a protocol that had over 1,200 test cases. And you can imagine how long it took to dry run that a number of times just to say that we could have an error-free protocol. So I think you can all agree that there must be a better and more value-added kind of way, and kind of thankfully that's coming now. And the next slide, Khaled, please.
Sure.
So I guess we were very fortunate that new approaches were being discussed and promoted by the FDA around the time we were considering implementing this system, as it made its implementation a lot more attractive, or at least palatable. And the approach turns traditional practices on their head and places critical thinking rather than documentation at the heart of CSV. And the need to create a requirements document and to conduct a risk analysis are still with us, which is a good thing, because these documents add a tremendous amount of value. After all, like when you know the intended use of a system and understand the features associated with the system, it allowed us to make to identify those high-risk features that directly impact patient safety or device quality. These high-risk features obviously required a rigorous amount of testing because of what they were doing. However, less burdensome techniques, which we will see later, can be applied to areas of lower risk. And this made not only protocol generation faster, but really more importantly, it freed up more time for us to spend challenging the system to make sure that it meets its intended use, as opposed to challenging a protocol to make sure it's got no typos. This new approach encourages the use of all information available and to apply critical thinking when validation planning. This includes leveraging the information gathered from conducting vendor audits. Like if the vendor has conducted rigorous and robust testing as part of their validation, and we've evidence to that effect, like what value are we going to add as a manufacturer retesting all the system, again, especially for off-the-shelf functionality. So just to give you like a flavor of the system that we were trialing the guidance on, it has the ability to provide equipment control at Boston Scientific. And what does that mean? Well, it means its functionality includes items like asset tracking, inventory management, preventative maintenance, and calibration. So quite heavy-hitting regulations are at play here. And the system also interfaces with our MES. So after breaking the system down into its various features, which we spent a good bit of time on, we applied the following risk classifications to each of them. So for high risk, there were those features that directly impacted product quality or human safety, or indeed had the potential to cause or impede a product recall. Our medium features were those that indirectly impacted product quality or human safety, or were required for regulatory compliance, for example, 21 CFR Part 11. And low were pretty much everything else, which were typical features there that were there to meet business needs. So by applying these risk categories to the features of our calibration and maintenance system, we discovered that 25% of our features were classified as low risk, 70% were classified as medium risk, and only 5% of the features were considered high risk. So applying the principles of the guidance, we only had to apply traditional scripted testing to 5% of our features. For all the other features, we only had to apply lesser validation techniques such as ad-hoc testing and unscripted testing, which Damien will take you through. So I'm sure you can appreciate that this is a massive transition from applying traditional scripted testing to everything. And in our case, it shrunk the protocol by at least like 60%. And it's worth pointing out too that those people that were performing the validations were thrilled, because they felt that they were part of a process that was adding value, as opposed to just creating documentation for an auditor. They could see that their work actually meant something, it was proving something. And I know at the start of these webinars, Khaled has called this series a CSA Revolution, because it most certainly is. It's without doubt the biggest paradigm shift that I've seen in my time working in this space. And I'm absolutely delighted to have been given the opportunity by Damien to be part of the team defining this guidance. So Damien will take you through now the different techniques that we used.
Yeah, Khaled, just leave it on this slide for a second, please. Just the previous slide, 1 second. I think this is thanks, Ray. Thank you very much. I think this is a key slide, right? If you think about what we talked about before, right? The traditional, testing approach, right? And Ray was talking about, wheelbarrows full of test evidence. And he also had a great line in there about testers spending more time testing the protocols instead of testing the system. Like, we absolutely want our testers testing the system, and not worrying about getting all the documentation, clean and dry running test scripts. So looking at this, like, for an enterprise-wide calibration maintenance system, we have traditional testing, like scripted testing, for 5% of the functionality. That's a huge paradigm shift, right? And whenever we started off as an industry group, we said our goal was a paradigm shift and to really move the goalposts here. And as an industry, the FDA need to be absolutely commended here. Like, this, is a huge change for what we do. I know I talked about this potential maybe about 10 years ago in a conference in Europe, and a lot of people were concerned about it, but it's amazing that here we are in public, lots of big companies doing it. The FDA are very close to releasing guidance on it, and it really simplifies validation and makes a lot of sense. Just jump on here to the next slide, please, Khaled.
Sure. I just wanted to add something here, and thank you for mentioning this. This is really a great slide. The other thing is, again, I want to really mention it again, how ISPE GAMP is definitely embracing, the CSA, because they've talked about it for so many years, right? What we're really doing here is just explicitly stating, yes, you can do this. This is an enterprise system. It's not a product related. The focus should be really on patient and product quality, and not to mention data integrity, because that is what we've been working on with GAMP on updating and adding an appendix based on CSA concept into the data integrity by design. So again, to save you some of the questions and to really answer a broad answer here, is it just the FDA doing it? Absolutely not. I think many other agencies are following through. And why? Just because there is a concept, right? There are controls in place. And really, to me, it is so important, and I'm really passionate about it, and I can hear it in Ray's voice and Damien's voice, how passionate and how happy they are with the result that we're doing. And I'm sure your quality organization is very happy with you. So we'll take it to the next one.
Yeah, thanks, Khaled. Thanks, Khaled. Okay, so the previous slide was saying, right, with 5% of 5% traditional testing, 70% of our functionality fell within what we ranked as medium risk, right? So we leveraging the guidance document, then we actually implemented unscripted testing for our medium risk functionality. We call it scenario-based testing inside. So really within BSC, but really, what is it, right? You still have a high-level test plan in place. You develop a test script. You pre-approve a test script. The big difference is the test script does not have step-by-step activities. So you define the scenario, what you're testing, what you want to test, and then you leave it to the tester's discretion to go ahead and test the system as they want to. And this is where the testers, Ray mentioned the testing team being a lot more happy and feeling like they're providing value. They're actually going testing the system and checking things under that scenario that they want to check. Not that somebody said, click this button, verify it went green, and then you write down, yes, the button went green. That doesn't make a lot of sense for low and medium risk functionality. Here we have unscripted testing now, where you do not have step-by-step activities. You have a scenario that's pre-approved. Whenever somebody tests, you still record the tester's name, the date of the testing, the software version, where the test passed or failed. Absolutely record any issues like you always would. And we also create an opportunity to record comments. The feedback on this testing approach from the business owners, from the test team, from the development team, they all think this is really a game changer. let's just move on to the next slide, please, Khaled. Ad hoc testing, then bringing it down another level, right? So this is for the low risk features and functionality as a company, and applying the guidance principles. We have leveraged ad hoc testing for lower risk functionality. So what happens here? It's pre-approved in the plan. In a plan, we say we're going to apply ad hoc testing, and as Ray mentioned, we define in our critical thinking, we define which features are low, and that's your test plan done. So then we actually go ahead and apply ad hoc testing for those 25%, in this case, for the lower risk functionality. So what do? We have a tester come along, again, fill out a template, who the tester, the name of the tester, the date of the testing, the version, record the scenarios that they tested. They were asked to go out and test certain features, record that they did it pass or fail, did the system work as a scenario or as the feature intended, and then do you have any issues and do you have any comments? Very, very simple, very limited documentation, both in ad hoc testing and unscripted testing. But really, I suppose to get to this level, you had to do the critical thinking above. It's a building block, right? So this is the final, a lot of the benefit comes at the end. You put your effort in up front around your risk analysis, and you build on it feature by feature. Last slide, please, Khaled. Okay, so this summarizing what we've done as a company here and what we've talked through today. So with the preventive maintenance system, it's a industry standard vendor that we've used, and like a lot of these systems, enterprise or manufacturing wide enterprise software, a lot of times it's a industry standard vendor that BSC and many other companies are using. We went ahead and audited them, and we were very happy with their audit results. Did a lot of very thorough verification and validation in place, a lot of good change control. We've always seen that as a company, but we've never done anything with it. Here we're using that as a building block, like I described there, to build our risk-based validation on top of it. So okay, with a strong vendor, a strong system coming qualified into Boston Scientific, now we're applying a risk-based critical thinking approach to our preventive maintenance and calibration system. We're looking at what BSC are using, what features and functions we're using. We're ranking them by risk level, by high, medium, and low. And then based on that risk level, we're applying, scripted testing, unscripted testing, and ad hoc testing. And I suppose the result of this effort has been we've been able to roll out the preventive maintenance and calibration system in a much faster time. The business owners and the sites are delighted because they've got to really beat on the system. They spend a lot of time testing the system, which is what we want them to do, right? We spend a lot less time creating stacks of paperwork and completing test scripts whenever it's not necessary. And like overall as a company, we absolutely embrace the principles from CSA and the pending GPSV update. And just to wrap it up, just thanks again to Jason Spiegler and Siemens, who spearheaded a lot of this over the last four plus years, maybe 5-6 years, maybe even. Cisco and the team in the FDA, like the rest of the industry group that we've been involved with, and compliance group, obviously, for bringing us along here today. But folks, I suppose really the pardon word I want to say in this is that as a company, we absolutely embrace this CSA, and it's the way we're moving our enterprise-wide validation and all of our non-device software. So thank you, Khaled.
Thank you, Damon. Thank you so much. I always like to ask that question before I move on here. Let's assume the FDA draft guidance does not get released ever. What would you do?
Well, we already looked into that, Khaled, as a company. And I actually I remember being in a meeting in Washington and talking to John Murray and Cisco about it. We've our own, we've quite a few folks in our team who are quite specialized in software validation, and they spend time going through the regulations, right? And, you know, there's nothing in the regulations telling us to do what industry is currently doing today. So there is no, there is no regulatory change, global regulatory change. There is nothing global that tells you to have test scripts for everything, have screenshots, have actual results. Like, that doesn't exist. There's a lot of there's TIR documents. There's a lot of other documents that have been released over many numbers of years, guiding us towards where we are today, but industry have not embraced them. Like I mentioned, like I said earlier, I talked about this type of principles in a conference in Europe maybe 10 years ago, and people were not happy to hear it. That they're going, hey, you're going to get us in trouble. But I think really the short answer is, if the guidance didn't come out, there's nothing. The regulations tell you to apply risk-based validation.
Yep.
What we talked about today, you heard me say and Ray say risk-based validation many times. Critical thinking, applying risk, and applying the rigor where it's necessary, and not applying rigor where it's not necessary. And that's really the essence of CSA.
Well said, sir. Thank you. Thank you for that. And by the way,
maybe if you just add,
I just wanted to say we did not practice that question, by the way. So thank you for answering it, because that's really what goes in my mind, and I'm sure in everyone's mind. Ray, please go ahead.
Yeah, Caleb, it's also worth kind of noting, like there's a really good guidance, and Damien kind of touched on it there, from AMI, the Association for the Advancement of Medical Instrumentation. They have a wonderful guidance, TIR 36, and it's kind of been internationalized, in that it aligns not only with the FDA regulations, but also with ISO 13485. And at its heart, it's all up talking about critical thinking, doing what's right and what's logical and what's defendable. And both Damien and I, we're as sure as we can be that we're on a good place here.
Love it. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. It's really such a relieving and refreshing, and to just hear you talking about this. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you. Really, I'm just gonna kind of go over the next step, which I mentioned it earlier to our audience. The next step is really start thinking how you want to implement CSA. Digitize your current paper CSA process. This is, to me, very, very important. Create awareness to accelerate innovation and realize the value. Obviously, Boston Scientific had realize the values, and I'm sure they're doing it to a lot more systems. And please do not wait for the draft guidance. There's a lot of other guidance out there that is telling you to do this 20 years ago, but unfortunately we haven't. But that's okay. There's always time. Before I jump into the question, I just want to let you know that next week we're going to have Lou Poirier. I'm sorry, I was just going to say his name is a French name. Lou, he's also one of the Fix-It team, and actually came from Medtronic and then now with Lentis. And I know he used to work with Damien back in the days. And also, he's going to be really talking about a very sensitive subject, which is organizational culture change. I don't know, I'd probably pull Damien in 2 weeks, but hey, I think this will be a very interesting one. And also, please keep an eye on what's coming up, with this series. So next week, in 2 weeks, we'll have episode 6, and then we'll have additional episode coming right after that. So really, what I want to do, open it up for some question. I know we received some question. Chris, do you want to go ahead and?
I'll handle the Q&A. Again, if we don't get to your question, don't worry. We will follow up with you after the fact. So Khaled, do you want to go over question 1 for Damien and Ray?
That's a good question. Thank you for that question. How can we categorize features required for regulatory compliance as medium risk? So gentlemen, if anyone can answer that.
I can have an attempt first anyway. I mean, if the regulation will say like ERES doesn't directly impact the patient or doesn't directly impact the device quality, then it is medium risk. So it's not dispositioning product, it's not inspecting the product, it's not putting product on hold, it's not releasing a product. So it's what's the feature doing to the product and what can go wrong. So that's my answer to that.
Thank you, sir. Damien, anything to add?
No, I always punt those questions to Ray, so you just called me out there, Colin. No, I have nothing to add. No, like I suppose really on top of that as well, right? Like it's what's coming in the guidance document as well. You know, we've had these discussions. You know, the industry team we've talked through this. You know, and it's a very well seasoned group of many years professionals that have talked through this, and we're all aligned with what Ray just said there, right? That unless the regulation can directly impact product or patient, it can't be ranked as high. And medium is what we all aligned on there. And I think Ray did a super job in explaining why.
Awesome. I can add just my 2 cents to it, and I support Ray. If there is really no impact to patient product quality, and I always like to add data integrity. To me, data integrity is always literally a medium, to be honest with you, specifically if there's no impact to patient or product. So hopefully those answered that question. Next question is, so what kind of vendor documents are being leveraged and how examples would be helpful? So Damien or Ray, what kind of vendor documentation have you guys leveraged? I mean, I have an answer, but I'd like you to answer because they're gonna look at me. Yeah, he's a consultant. He wants to sell products.
I guess in the specific example here, we were very lucky from the point of view, lucky in that the vendor we went with was one, like very well established, but two, maybe because they were keen for business, they were willing to share the protocols that they ran, the executed protocols, not just a blank protocol, so we could see what they did. So in our case, we brought that into a quality system and got it approved, yada yada. Now, supposing they didn't share that with us, Khaled, and we we audited the vendor and we saw their life cycle and it was very good and they were able to demonstrate that, would we take that to the bank? We certainly would. So the trouble with, if there is trouble with critical thinking, it's trying to legislate for it. Like what does critical thinking mean? You have to take a holistic view of the information you have and build a case. So I suppose we had the best thing that could have happened for us in this example was that the vendor gave us all their executed test cases and we took those. But that's not always going to be the case. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I'm building on that, and you and I talked about this in this instance. We didn't need the test scripts either. We audited them. We had an audit. We had an auditor audit them. We went through their life cycle, went through the change control process, and we looked at the validation, and we're very happy with it. We could have left it there, and we'll leave it there many times in the future, and build our foundation on that. So as you said, in this case, we have test scripts. If we didn't have them, we audited and we saw them, it would still be as strong, and it's absolutely defendable.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Thank you. And really, I could speak from a vendor of a specific product or an implementer of the Polarian tool, for example. So yes, we hand over the validation package of what we validated, right? And the idea is for the client not to re-execute everything, right? There would always be certain configuration or customization specific to that client. I would focus on testing those, but also keeping CSA in mind, right? I think it's very, very crucial. Now, the other thing I want to really mention it here, and maybe if there's any software vendors on the call may not like me for that, we do not recommend software vendor to really just apply CSA, right? We want them to actually test their product because they are, again, passing it on to the life science industry. So in order for the life science industry to trust us, we really have to do rigorous testing. And again, rigorous testing does not mean documentation. Documentation is not going to buy me anything at the end of the day. What's really going to buy me at the end of the day is bug-free system that works in production or works, period, right? So that's really what I wanted to add on to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just on top of that, Khaled, one of the vendors we were talking to through the industry panel shared that they do, a terabyte of testing themselves, a full terabyte of automated testing every quarter. Like, why would we ignore that as an industry? You have to build on top of that. You have to leverage that. And there's no way, in that case, why would we be taking a copy of that? A full terabyte of data every quarter? There's no need to take that, right? You build your strategy on top of that. You don't need to take that test evidence.
Absolutely. Great. Still have some time, so that's great. One question just came in. Can we perform unscripted testing for the ERAS requirement? Would it be acceptable for the FDA?
I see no reason why you wouldn't. Sorry, I thought you were asking me.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm looking at you on my screen.
Yeah, it's just like the Brady Bunch here. No, absolutely. I think that's sufficient. Bearing in mind what's the intended use of the system, where it is, but I would think as a rule of thumb, yeah, you should be able to do that.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Damien?
Yeah, and if you think about it, the way a lot of companies have Paralyzing set up anyway, you have a set of guidelines there anyway, Paralyzing guidelines in companies that are already defined. Why would you write them out again in test scripts? Just say go and execute the Paralyzing for open system, closed system, whatever. Just go do it. The requirements are already defined, right? So go test them is what you're telling somebody to do. Like Paralyzing's around a long time. We don't need to rewrite, those tests out over and over again to say we've tested them. Go and test them and verify it works. And the vendor already tested it as well.
Yeah.
We're talking about off-the-shelf software system here in most cases, right? There's not many of us customizing Paralyzing functionality. So Paralyzing is coming already, validated by the vendor, verified by the vendor, and we're going to verify it again. But we do not need to script it, the way the vendor would.
And I really think the word unscripted or the word ad hoc, it's concerning some folks, right? They're thinking there isn't really an objective evidence of anything. We are still going through the testing, and as we saw from Boston Scientific, show an example of what it is. You are still testing that specific requirement. You're still tracing it back, right? So
yeah.
There is documentation. It's not, and I know why these questions, because usually inspectors from the FDA or auditors from any notified body, they target Part 11. They target electronic signature, and I understand why. And they want to see an objective evidence that you've tested it. Well, you've already collected some information from your vendor, and you've done an unscripted testing. What's more to do, right? And again, what is the risk, right? So yes, the risk, I always look at it when it comes to data integrity. Data loss is, always important to me. You're not able to see who did what and when. So those are very important, no doubt. And I'm seeing lots of questions on data integrity, which is interesting. And here's one I like, actually. Thank you, gentlemen, for the answers. So here's one. It says, shouldn't data integrity be a risk factor like in GAM 5? So I'm going to jump and answer that question about data integrity by design and why is it including CSA concept into that. And myself and actually 5 other folks, we've written the appendix. Some of them maybe on the call, maybe not, but I won't mention their names right now. I don't want them to shoot me. But we've actually updated an appendix, and I believe it will be Appendix 11, to be part of the data integrity by design. So again, CSA will modify some of that understanding, right? Data integrity is a risk, but again, is it really high, and why? Okay, again, it's regarding electronic signature around ERAS. Compliance to regulations is a high risk area as we impact data integrity. How can ERAS be medium? Again, since I mentioned medium, yes, I would look at it. It's maybe not necessarily always a medium, but if there is no impact to patient product safety, then patient safety and product quality, I think it should be medium. And again, you are testing it. The bottom line
exactly, Khaled, that's the important part. Like, you are testing it. Like, you still have requirements, you still have your risk documentation, you still have your tracing. The only thing that's missing from a traditional test is that your steps, which is a pain point where people are spending too much time testing the protocol as opposed to testing the system. So we're absolutely testing it. It is important. It's just not as important as something that's going to directly impact a product.
I suppose, guys, on the flip side of that, right, is how have we gotten to this, right? We sat down as a team, the business owner, the quality and everybody else, right? We've done a risk analysis. We've looked at the features and functions. We've determined this to be medium. It sounds like there's a few people on the call. If they were in that meeting, they would determine it to be high. If you determine to be high, go ahead. Like we're saying in this case, we determined, these features to be medium, and that's how we're qualifying them. There's nothing stopping anybody, to determine. We're not telling you how to, how you're using a system, or what way it should be ranked. This is how we've applied it, and these similar examples are in the guidance document. But if companies, like, this is what we've seen all along, this is the challenge and the pushback. I say, whenever I talked about this 10 years ago, we were getting this. I know we got it every time we've spoken in public. Industry are pushing back. This is a paradigm shift. I know it's difficult for you to comprehend that Power 11 is medium and not high. And if you can't get over that hurdle, don't jump it today. Keep it at high for now until you get used to it and understand the principles. Like Ray and I we're 4 or 5 years embedded in this now. Like we've talked, as a group we meet weekly, like we're meeting for 2 hours every week, and we're having workshops, and we put a lot of time and thought into this. So our heads have already moved on. But like I absolutely, and that's what Louis is going to talk about next week, is change management, right? And organizational change. As an industry, we've been doing, something different forever. So we're trying to move, and if people are not comfortable moving at a certain pace, go a little bit slower on the areas that you're concerned with, and prove it out.
Absolutely. Thank you. Great words. Thank you so much. Ray will give you the last word.
No, thank you very much, Khaled, for giving us the opportunity to come here today and share what we've learned. It's been an absolutely amazing journey. I've enjoyed every part of it, and it's nice to be able to showcase some of our work here.
Thank you very much, both of you. I really appreciate it. I know it's late in the afternoon now, so actually late in the evening for you. So I really appreciate your time staying late with us. Thank you so much, gentlemen, and look forward. Yeah, I'm still on my water here. Thank you, gentlemen. Always looking forward, to having you. And again, appreciate it. Chris, we'll pass it on to you for closure.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, if we didn't get to your question, we apologize, but we will make sure to get in contact with you offline. Everyone continue to be well. Be safe. We look forward to seeing you on our next webinar, September the 17th, with Lou Atlantheus, discussing overcoming cultural barriers with CSA. And again, Damien and Ray from Ireland, all the way from Ireland, thank you very much for your participation today. This webinar has now ended. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.